Good morning, Virgo. There are those who find this in a moment of clarity, and then there are those who find it in a moment of something else entirely, something harder to name. That particular mix of wanting and knowing better that sits in the chest like a stone. You keep picking up, even though you know how heavy it is. If you know that weight tonight, then this was always going to find you. There's someone who can't stop thinking about you, and you know it. You've known it for a while, not because they told you, they haven't told you. Not in words, not directly, but in the way certain people communicate the things they're too strategic to say out loud. In the timing of things, in the quality of their attention when they give it, in the specific, calculated way they make you feel their absence almost as much as their presence. Uh, Almost more, and that's not accidental. That's the part worth slowing down for. The absence, the silences, the withholding, the moments where they could reach and don't. That's not indifference. You felt indifference before. You know what it feels like. It feels like nothing, like empty space, like someone simply not being there. Um, but this is different. This absence has a texture. This silence has weight. This withholding feels, and this is the part that's hardest to admit, deliberate. Like someone who knows exactly where the warmth is and chooses carefully, consciously, when to give it and when to pull it back. Not because they don't feel it, but because they've learned somewhere, somehow, that control over the warmth is the most powerful thing they can hold. And you've been responding to it. That's the honest thing to look at. Not just that they're doing it, but that it's working. That the giving and the pulling back has created in you a particular kind of focus, a heightened attention, a state where their smallest gestures, a message, a look, a moment of warmth, land with a weight that the constant attention of someone else never quite produces. And that's uncomfortable to sit with, but that's by design. Not necessarily conscious design, not necessarily malicious, but design nonetheless. The intermittent warmth, the unpredictable attention, the way you never quite know which version of them you're going to get, the one that makes you feel chosen, or the one that makes you feel invisible. That unpredictability, that specific, exhausting unpredictability creates a kind of hunger. That consistent, steady attention never could. And you're hungry. That's the truth of where you are right now. Not in a diminishing way, not as a weakness, but as a fact worth naming. Because unnamed hunger, hunger you haven't looked at directly, is the thing they're counting on. Consciously or not, the unnamed hunger is what keeps you reaching toward the warmth every time it appears. What keeps you recalibrating? What did I do? What changed? What do I need to be to make the warmth stay this time. And that recalibrating, that constant, exhausting, almost involuntary recalibrating is the begging, not on your knees, not in words, not in anything you'd recognize as begging from the outside, but in the internal reorganizing, in the way you adjust yourself subtly, incrementally, toward whatever version of you seemed to produce the warmth last time, in the way your behavior, without you fully deciding this, has started to organize itself around their responses, around what works, around what gets the attention, around what makes them finally, briefly give you what you're looking for. That's the bend. That's the real one. Not physical, internal. The slow, almost imperceptible way a person starts to shape themselves around someone else's approval, around someone else's withholding, around the hope, that persistent, exhausting hope that this time the warmth will stay, that this time they'll stop pulling back, that this time, if you just get it right enough, they'll give you all of it. Not just the fragment, all of it. And the obsession, their obsession with you, is real. That's worth acknowledging. It isn't performance entirely. There's something genuine in what they feel toward you, something that draws them back, something that keeps you in their mind in the specific, intrusive way, that certain people take up residence in your thinking without asking permission. They think about you, probably more than they'd admit, probably more than feels comfortable for them. But here's the complicated thing. The thing that makes this particular dynamic so difficult to see clearly from inside it, their obsession and their withholding aren't contradictions. They're the same thing. The obsession is partly what drives the withholding, because someone who feels this much, who wants this intensely, and hasn't learned how to be with that wanting, will control it, will manage it, will find ways to have power over the thing that has power over them. And you, the thing that has power over them, become the thing they need to control. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you invited it, but because you matter to them, genuinely, uncomfortably matter. And mattering makes people who haven't resolved their own relationship with vulnerability reach for control every time, almost without exception. The intensity of what they feel becomes the exact fuel for the withholding that keeps you reaching. And so you're in this loop, their desire generating control, their control generating your hunger confirming their power feeding their desire, around and around, quietly, exhaustingly, in a way that looks from the outside like almost nothing, like just two people circling each other, not quite together, not quite apart, each waiting for the other to break first. And here's the question, the one that cuts through all of it. What would happen if you stopped recalibrating? Not dramatically, not as a strategy, though it might function as one, but genuinely, what would happen inside you, not to them, not to the dynamic, but inside you, if you stopped adjusting yourself toward what produces their warmth, if you let yourself be just exactly as you are, without the recalibrating, without the hunger shaping your behavior, without the internal begging that you've maybe stopped recognizing as begging because it's become so familiar. What does that version of you feel like? The one that isn't organized around their responses, the one that isn't listening constantly, with one ear always pointed toward them for signs of warmth or withdrawal, the one that just exists on its own terms, with its own center of gravity, without a single person's attention, functioning as the sun, that everything else orbits. That version, can you feel it? Even faintly, even underneath everything that's been layered on top of it, the version of you that existed before this person and their particular brand of almost, they're almost giving, they're almost staying, started reshaping things, that version is still there. It doesn't disappear because someone found the specific frequency that makes you reach. It just waits patiently underneath the hunger, underneath the recalibrating, underneath the loop. And here's what that version knows, what it's been trying to say, underneath all the noise of the wanting, desire that requires your diminishment to sustain itself, is not the kind worth begging for. Attention that only arrives when you've reached the right way, adjusted yourself into the right shape, isn't really seeing you. It's seeing what you're willing to become to receive it. And the you that twists and recalibrates and reaches, that's not the most interesting version of you. That's not even close to the most compelling one. The most compelling version of you, the one that actually generated the obsession, was the one that wasn't trying. The one that was just fully, unapologetically itself, before the hunger, before the recalibrating, before you learned the specific shape that seemed to produce the warmth. That version, the untwisted one, is what drew them in, is what keeps drawing them back, is what they're actually obsessed with, even if the way they express that obsession has been systematically dismantling it. And that's if you let yourself feel it. Actually, the clearest information available to you right now, not about them, about you, about what you're worth, about what you carry, about the fact that someone who clearly doesn't give their attention freely cannot stop thinking about you, cannot stop coming back, cannot, despite the control, despite the withholding, actually let go. That's not nothing. That's actually, when you look at it clearly, significant. The obsession is real. The pull is real. The fact that you live in their mind in ways they probably find inconvenient, that's real. And none of that requires you to reorganize yourself around their comfort with it. None of that requires you to wait quietly, hungrily, for them to decide when you've earned the full version of what they feel. You haven't been earning it. You never needed to earn it. It was already there, fully formed, fully real, before you reached once. Before you adjusted once, before you reorganized yourself toward their warmth, even slightly. The obsession predates the begging, which means the begging was never what created it. And stopping, the recalibrating, the adjusting, the internal reaching won't end it. If anything, and this is the part that's hard to hold, the version of you that stops reaching is probably the version they can't stop thinking about most. The version that doesn't reorganize, that doesn't recalibrate, that doesn't adjust its shape toward whatever produced the warmth last time. The version that just is fully untwisted, unbegging, exactly as it always was. Before all of this, that version, the one you've been slowly moving away from, is still the most powerful thing in this dynamic. It was always the most powerful thing. And coming back to it, not as a move, not as a strategy, but genuinely, quietly, for yourself, is the only thing that changes what this costs you. Because right now, it's costing you in the specific currency of self-abandonment, in the small daily surrenders of your own center toward their orbit. And you can keep paying that. People do for longer than makes sense from the outside, because the intermittent warmth, when it comes, is real enough to feel worth the cost. But there's another option: not to leave, not necessarily not to make any dramatic decision tonight, but just to come back to yourself, to find the version of you that isn't organized around their responses. That isn't listening with one ear always pointed toward them. That isn't hungry in the particular way. Their withholding has created just to remember what it felt like to be the center of your own world, your own warmth, your own attention, fully yours. Because that right there is the thing they're actually obsessed with, not the reaching version, not the recalibrating version, not the hungry version, the one that doesn't need them to be whole. That one, that's always been the one. And it's still here, underneath everything, waiting, not for them, for you, to come back to it come back to it.